everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Mish's Market Minute, sponsored by StockCharts TV. I am your host, Mish Schneider, and I'm really excited about this one today because there's been a lot of talk about SPACs. Those are special purpose acquisition companies, and essentially what they are meant to do is almost act as a blank check for another company that will be publicly traded without going through the IPO process. So in essence, it's very cost effective for these companies. And they, instead of raising money before, have one sponsor. And then when they go public, of course, then you can actively trade them. So we've made some really good money this year in SPACs. Actually, I will show you, although it wasn't part of what I was going to show you, but I will show it to you. SPACs are the latest craze, as we know, but also I read recently that they've been very heavily shorted. So I thought, gee, that makes them interesting to me. I know that one person in particular is involved in the cannabis space, and the guy is a multi-millionaire looking to go with a SPAC for his cannabis farm. So it is definitely something that people are looking at very much. So I don't think it's a fad that's going to go away anytime soon. So here are the symbols that I'm going to cover. I'm not going to read them to you as always, but I always like to keep them here so that you can look back and take a look. So let's go now and start with the charts. And your first chart here is Zynga. And I highly suggest that what you do is I'm just going to strictly talk about the technicals, obviously, since that's the purpose of this. But I want you, and I encourage you to go and look at these companies and see what these SPACs are interested in doing. Like, for example, I'll show you the one that we bought. This one was Mountain Pass, and it was originally called FVAC. I cannot remember the exactly what that stood for, but that was Frontier. I think it was Frontier Value Acquisition Company. It was a blank check company that had sponsored this. We actually had bought it down. Well, where was it? Actually, we bought it around here. I think we bought it here, didn't get out. We stayed. We had a low close stop underneath all the lows right here. We never took a profit here because we had risked so much, never took out those lows. And then we wound up taking several profits along the way. And here we are still in this with a tail. So we literally got in at like 1138. This traded up to 55. Our average exit price was really between 30 and 45. So not too bad. So there is money in these, but this had to do with rare earth minerals, which is why I'm telling you that it's always a good idea for you to understand what the SPAC is and make sure it's in a space that you actually like. And another one, which I haven't bought, but I've been watching very carefully, it's not part of the list, but this is Churchill and this is Lucid Motors. And so this had this huge move up when it first got announced, gap down, and now you could see that it had another big move, and now along with the market is underneath the 50-day moving average. But this would be one that I would still potentially consider, probably more if it can take out 30 and then risk under this low right here, which is 25.80. So that's not a bad, with this something volatile, to risk less than $5. That was a bonus one because I wasn't planning on showing you that. So let's go back now to ZNGA. So with ZNGA, this also broke down under the 50. You can see the real motion. There's no divergence. Well, there is a divergence because this is under the 200 where it's over the 200. And it's in terms of its leadership, of course, it's underperforming. So now what you have here is a situation where, remember, I've told you about these new 6-month lows. The last time it traded down at this low, is it giving me a date? Yes, January 19th. And here we are at March 19th. Exactly 60 days later. So if that's the case now, basically what it's telling you here is that if it holds this low today of 978, and on Monday it can close above today's high at 1001, you do have an interesting stop here against 953 or the 200-day moving average. So that's one for you guys to take a look at. This is Reinvent Technology Partners. You can see that this is basically new. I don't even have a real motion indicator on this. And of course, it's gone down. So it's showing no leadership here, although starting to come back. This also made a new 60 plus day low here and confirmed the next day by closing above this high. See that? The high was 1081. The next day, this actually closed higher. I can't tell you what the close is because it's not showing me up there, but it's showing that it went up as high as 1102. So when you have this type of situation, you're looking here at this low at 1026. If this holds and gets back through 11, that could also be a really interesting play. And what I would do with this one, of course, is if I bought it over 11, I would only risk to under 1026 with a little bit of fudge. So far, these are showing as really interesting trading opportunities here. And by the way, I do discovery with you. This is what I love to do, is do these shows with you every week. And I wind up coming up with trade picks, some of which I've done and done very, very well on. So this one here is Burgundy Technology Acquisition Company. So again, this is just the SPAC. This hasn't actually gone through what the usual process is that has to go approval through the shareholders and get any other types of approvals that they need before they actually go into a company, which is why sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So in this case, I don't know if I would necessarily want to touch this one, other than I do like the fact that it's come back here in terms of its leadership from the low, and it didn't have any kind of great reversal pattern because this bar, it didn't take out that high until way days later. So with this one, I'd probably be less inclined to look at. However, if it does get through 1050, at least you can say that all this consolidation has cleared. The next one is FRX. Forest Road Acquisition Company. Forrest gave this to me. I can see why. His name is Forrest. But anyway, this one is really new. And again, I didn't do the research necessarily on what all of these things do. However, if you look them up, you can find out very easily. Nonetheless, this too had a new low it made here on this day at 1013. Hasn't done very much since. I would say I would give this one a little bit of maturity here to see if it can really get back through, let's say 1225. And then perhaps it's showing you some signs of strength. Now, the next one, I will tell you, we have skin in the game. This is Fintech Acquisition Core. So because we have skin in the game, I know what this one does. And this one is for the eToro platform. And those of you who don't know what eToro platform is, that is the platform that actually trades cryptocurrency. So we got in yesterday and it dove a little bit. So essentially right now, I would say that if you really wanted to play this more conservatively, is you would buy this over 13, and you can either use the stop of the low today under 1182. We like to give these things room, so we're actually having our stop under 11. And if it gets over 13, we'll actually be in the money at that point. And then we're looking to see whether or not it can challenge these highs, and we'll take some profit up there if it does. But I really think that eToro and the whole idea of cryptocurrency platform is very, very bullish going forward. So that's why I was willing to put some skin in the game on a day when the market wasn't doing particularly well. Okay, let's go now to the next one. And this one, we also have skin in the game. No, this is not giving me SVAC. Okay, for some reason, I'm not able to get this one up, but it's here it adds a U. So that's good. I'm glad I looked. All right, so this is actually a little bit different than the one that we're in, because the one we're in right now is SVAC, but I'll show it to you anyway because it might be similar. And the one we're in is trading at 1004, and that is exactly where we're long at, like 1002. So this one has to do with a retail global sort of blockchain technology that instantly connects and talks like a data collection type of situation. The name of the company that it's looking at is CYXTERA, something like that, Sixtera. I think it's a very forward-looking type of technology. I believe it's going to be the real future with data collection and having instant data like that, especially using some kind of blockchain technology. That's why we're in it, but it's just sitting there. Why? It's sitting there because it's waiting for some kind of approval, which it hasn't gotten yet. So this is the kind of thing that I don't mind sitting in. Of course, I have a stop. I always have a stop. And my stop is under the low of when this actually was formed. So that's way I kind of know I'm wrong. If it breaks down, this thing isn't going to go anywhere. But it's the kind of thing where if they get some kind of an approval overnight, you could wake up and see this much, much higher. So right now, this has a bit of a different number. So just going off of this chart right here, I would say that if it can hold really basically above 1015 and then clear these most recent highs, which would be at over 1055, if it does it and doesn't have this huge gap up one day, that too might be an opportunity for you. The next one is IPOF, Social Capital Head Holdings Corporation. Again, please look these things up. But they're very exciting to me. I mean, these are all new issues, and these could be very hot if any of them take off. Of course, not every SPAC takes off, as you know, but when they do, they go up really, really big. So in this case, you've got this low here, had an inside day, never actually did very much. So just going off the historical chart pattern itself, I would say at this point, again, to be more conservative, I'd be looking for a move probably over 1250 and see what happens from there. You can actually see there's a moving average coming in higher at 1395. So far the first couple I gave you seem to be the more interesting ones. Next one is called Ajax. And again, look at this. This is hovering here near the low, so not particularly impressive. However, if it doesn't take out this low here at 1018 and it starts to clear, say, the high of 1060, then you have an opportunity maybe to participate this if you look this up and then you decide that this is something that may have a future. And by the way, I got a lot of these lists from recommendations from Yahoo Finance and NASDAQ, so it's not like I'm just picking these names. I found these names over SPACs to watch for 2021. This one is Northern Genesis Acquisition Company. You can see there's a little bit of history here. It started in 2020. Look at that, did nothing, and then wham, and this is what could happen. Now it comes all the way off. Sometimes that's a good sign. It means that you get another opportunity, like what I showed you with Mountain Pass. But in some cases, it also means that it's not going to happen. So you have to be, like I said, do your research. But in the case of this, with all this sort of bottoming pattern here, I would say to be most conservative, I would probably wait for two closes over the 50-day moving average, because we actually have a 50-day moving average that we can use to make that kind of assessment. So that would be somewhere over 23, which means it really has to trade another 520 higher from here. If you wanted to try to get in earlier, then maybe I'd say over 20, and then I would use this most recent low of 1677 as my risk. DMYD, DMY Technology Group. Again, look at this. This is what you hope for. This is the pay off when you get in on these SPACs in the beginning and then whammo. Kind of like what I just showed you with FTCV. I'm kind of hoping that happens, of course. So in this case now we have two, well, it didn't really have any kind of reversal pattern, but it had this big sell-off. I would say now I really want to see this hold 15 and get through 1750. And again, check out and see what this particular SPAC does, what it's planning to back. I'm waiting for one in the cannabis space, the one I told you about in the beginning. I don't have the name of it, of course, because that would be illegal, but I will be waiting very anxiously for that to be announced. Now, I kind of like this one, even though it made this big move. It went down to the 200, broke it again, and then closed above, broke it, and now, as I'm talking to you, is back above. Not really showing much in the way of momentum, obviously, here, or any kind of leadership. But if we can show any kind of strength, it would be a move, say, over this high right here, which is 1520. And then you can use a stop to underneath this low to see if this can get up to 20 and beyond. Again, Stable Road Acquisition Company, make sure you look it up. This was a SPAC, is now an actual company. This has to do with the 3D printing space. So I'm happy to get a chance to show you this because I showed you this a while ago when I covered all stocks in the 3D printing space. And this is Desktop Metal. So this was a SPAC. So now basically what you have here is a really nice move down to the 200. People say these moving averages don't work. They do. Showing a little bit of leadership here again over the SPY, and it's holding over the 200. So it held the 200 when it went down. I'd like to see a little bit more momentum here since we can use it back over the Bollinger Band. But nonetheless, if this thing takes out 2150, you might start a partial position and then add if it can get through and hold over the 50 at 2340. Because this too, this is a space that I absolutely like for the future, which is the 3D printing space. Next one is SFSR. And this is Fisker Inc. This is a popular one. And you can see that back in the fall, it didn't do very well. It came off really hard. But since then, now we had this big move up, and now we're back down, sort of consolidating. You want to see this real motion hold the 50, and that means you want to see the price hold the 50 as well at 1856. In terms of chart patterns here, this is a little bit harder to read, other than the fact I would say I'd be looking for this to take out 2213, which was the high of 2 days ago. The day that I'm talking to you is Friday, so this would be the high of Wednesday. Then I would say perhaps today the high got up to 2172, so 2213, and then I would risk to under that 50-day moving average. And again, make sure you research. I can't say it enough. Don't buy these things blind. Now, QS was one we were in. This is QuantumScape Corporation. We were in this one. This has to do with electric cars, and we made really good money in this. We actually caught this move up. We didn't catch this one because I didn't even know about it then, but it was here that we caught this move up, and we have no position in this right now. However, watching, because it's holding over the 50-day moving average, which means you've got this 5270 as a good risk point here. And I don't know, maybe this would be the kind of thing I would look at over 60 at this point. In fact, I am going to take a note on this one because I said we did have this and we got out. And it still looks pretty good here. It looks like this thing could actually go up. I like this kind of bottoming formation. So that one gets a star from me. Let's also look at Draftkings, which is another one that started out as a SPAC and now is a real stock. And this one, I think, well, I think this one also, I think that the whole idea of online gambling, regardless of what happens post-pandemic, is going to be really catching on. You can see there's a little bit of diversion here in that this is under the 200, while this is well over the 50 and the 200, but look at the leadership here. At this point, I'm not crazy about the risk all the way down to 60. I wish I had been looking at this more down here after it tested the 50, had an inside day, and broke out the next day. But nonetheless, I would almost say at this point, you're better off buying the new high, which means over 74.09. And then you can do it as a more active trade maybe, and risk to under the 60 would be a $15 trade. So that means you'd be looking for $30. So you'd be looking for this to get a 105. Could it? It might. But I would almost say if it gets through that 75, then you probably would want to risk more like $10 here or under 65. So that looks like a pretty good setup there. Next one is IRDM. Iridium Communications. And this is also kind of an interesting looking chart in that it broke down under everything here and it broke down on the price. So I don't know if I would do much here, but I would say if it got closer to 35, at least you could use the 200-day moving average. Otherwise, I wouldn't touch it because of the momentum. Instead, I would want to see the momentum increase and then maybe wait for this to get back over that 50-day moving average. So definitely not my favorite setup here when you've had these huge breakdowns on a gap, can't fill the gap, and you have a momentum that's still showing a lot of weakness compared to the price movement. IMVT, Immunovant. Well, I'm assuming this has something to do with the pharmaceutical space because of the name Immuno. But interesting price action. So obviously something happened that brought this thing really down and it cracked. This is a classic reversal pattern here because it went all the way down and then closed on the high and gap the next day. So that makes it pretty easy. At this point now, you really want to see this gap hold. So you never want to see this go below 1350, and it's really consolidating here. So you got a couple of choices. You can either say after all these days of consolidation, it takes out the high at 1737, and I use a risk to, let's say, under this low of 1478, or you could also say that this is really not showing much after this big thing. It just kind of had a big gap and now can't go anywhere. But if it takes out 20, then there's a chance that this thing can go up. But right now, this is in a bearish phase and the momentum is not all that impressive. But what is interesting is the leadership here against the benchmark is showing some actual positive movement. Betterware de Mexico, SAPI de CV. Okay. Wow, interesting. So this one is under the 50, as you can see, and look at this momentum is just god awful. So I wouldn't touch this, but I will say that if this thing comes off hard, maybe closer to 30 would be interesting. Or if you really start to see this momentum turn around, maybe that would coincide with a 2 days close over its 50-day moving average, which right now is at 39.04, and then I would risk to under this low right here at 35.58. Again, please take a look and see what these companies do. And some of them are just not great, and some of them are really good. So far we've got a couple there. The next one is Adapt Health Core. Now this looks interesting, except that we still haven't seen the momentum go back over the 50, even though the price is. But after a nice correction, you can see here that it's back over the 50. So I might keep an eye on this one. Doesn't look like an inside day. It looks like this low, 35.53, is lower. Yes, this low was lower than the low of the day before. However, you would either want to say, I want to get into this on the closing basis if it holds here, maybe if it even clears 37.70 and risk to under the 50, or wait for all of this to be taken out. Because the momentum is coming back, that makes me somewhat friendly to this. However, again, I would make sure that you use a tight stop in this case under the 50. The day it cleared the 50 is what I usually like to do, and that would be the low here under 34.56. So maybe, like I said, buy it over 37.70, risk to under 34.56 to see if this can get any traction, and of course, take a look. So I said with RTP that considering we had a reversal pattern, over 11 might be a shot. So I think that was not a bad one. And BTAQ. Also, even though this is kind of a sloppy formation here, if it holds 10, I kind of like it more if it can get through like 1050. And I think there was one other that I liked here. Oh yeah, the one that we're in. I'll just show this one to you again. This Fintech Acquisition Corporation. Obviously, if we have skin in the game, you know I like it. So hopefully this was helpful, give you a little bit of an introduction to the SPAC world with a few good actionable informations and one to avoid. And like I said, there are plenty of places that you can look to find out exactly what these SPACs are backing and wait for. Also look at the schedule to see if you get any kind of schedule in terms of approvals by shareholders or whether they're moving forward, like what would happen with Mountain Pass. Okay, that's it for now. You all have a great day, great weekend. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.
Hey, Grayson Rose here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're going to bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.